Around the World Lit Audio 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel García Márquez. Chapter 8. Full Narration Script. Channel Intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week, free to listen. Chapter Recap. In Chapter 7, José Arcadio Buendía died under the chestnut tree, as small yellow flowers fell from the sky over Macondo. Ursula organized the burial without weeping. Pietro Crespi arrived and fell between Rebeca and Amaranta, neither of whom would let him go. Rebeca ate dirt again. Colonel Aureliano Buendía came home from the war, older, more distant, more the colonel and less the son, stayed 3 days, ate his mother's food, and left again. Chapter 8. Chapter 8. Rebeca married José Arcadio, not Pietro Crespi, the Italian merchant who had spent years trying to marry her, who had played the pianola and given music lessons, and waited with the patient suffering of a man who believes that persistence is a form of devotion. Not the man she had been positioned to marry by the logic of the household and the sequence of events that had arranged themselves around her arrival in the Buendía house, as a child carrying her parents' bones. The José Arcadio she married was the eldest son, the one who had disappeared with the gypsies years before, who had sailed away following the girl with silver coins in her hair, and had not been heard from since, who had been presumed by most of the family to be somewhere in the world doing whatever it was that people who disappeared with gypsies did. He came back. He came back as suddenly, and as unexpectedly as he had left, appearing one morning in Macondo with the specific quality of a man who has been many places and done many things, and carries the evidence of both on his body and in his manner. He was enormous, larger than he had been as a young man, his skin covered in tattoos that told stories in a language nobody in Macondo could read, his presence filling whatever space he occupied with the absolute authority of someone who has learned, through experience rather than birth, that they take up exactly as much room as they decide to. He saw Rebeca. This was the whole story, compressed into its essential elements. He saw her and she saw him, and something happened between them that was immediate and total and did not require the gradual process of courtship or the extended negotiations of conventional attraction. It was the specific recognition of two people who have been waiting, without knowing it, for exactly this. Ursula did not approve. Her objection was practical rather than moral, or rather, her moral objection was expressed through practical arguments, the way Ursula's most powerful feelings always expressed themselves. She said that Rebeca was practically family, having lived in the house for years, which made the marriage irregular in ways she found difficult to specify but strongly felt. She said that Pietro Crespi was waiting. She said that the proper sequence of things had been disrupted. None of this mattered. Rebeca and José Arcadio were married in the new church Father Nicanor had built. The ceremony was attended by half the village, partly because weddings were always attended in Macondo, and partly because this particular wedding had the quality of an event that people felt they should witness, as though its irregularity made it historically significant in ways that conventional weddings were not. Pietro Crespi, when he heard the news, stopped eating for 3 days. He did not die, but he became, in the weeks that followed, something he had not been before, a man defined by what had not happened to him, rather than by what had. He continued giving music lessons. He continued maintaining the pianola. He continued existing in Macondo with the quiet diminishment of a person whose primary purpose has evaporated, who has not yet found another. Amaranta watched this with the complicated feelings of a woman who had spent years preventing what had just happened through a different route, and was now confronted with the possibility that her interference had accomplished nothing except misery for everyone including herself. She did not celebrate. She did not, precisely, grieve. She did what Amaranta always did. She turned the feeling inward and made it available for later use, which was her particular talent and her particular curse. The war continued in its distant way. Reports came back from Colonel Aureliano Buendía in the manner of dispatches, from a campaign that was going neither particularly well, nor particularly badly. The specific quality of a prolonged conflict, that has outlasted its original justifications, and is now sustained more by the momentum of itself than by the convictions of either side. Macondo received the news with the resigned attention of a village that has accepted it as part of a larger story it does not fully control, and cannot entirely understand. New people kept arriving. This was the other constant of the period, the village growing, filling, changing with each arrival. Some came following the road that Ursula had discovered, and that now connected Macondo to the rest of Colombia. Some came as refugees from the war. Some came for reasons they did not explain, and that Macondo, with its characteristic mixture of hospitality and incuriosity, did not ask about. Among the arrivals was a priest, not Father Nicanor, who had returned to his diocese after his levitating period, and left the new church in the care of whoever was available. A different priest, younger, with less theatrical approach to the supernatural and more administrative approach to the practical work of managing a parish. He arrived, established himself, and began the ordinary work of a country priest without any particular incident. This was noted by Macondo as a change in the right direction, after several years of miracle-based ministry. Ursula, watching all of this, had a thought. It was not a new thought. She had been having versions of it for years, watching her children and their children begin to repeat, in their own lives, the specific patterns of behavior that she associated with the Buendía family. The solitude, the obsession, the difficulty of connecting fully with another person while remaining fully oneself, the tendency toward isolation even in the midst of activity. She thought, we are all doing the same things that were done before us. She could not yet articulate this precisely. It was an impression rather than a conclusion, the sense that the family moved in circles, that each generation reenacted something the previous generation had enacted, that what looked like progress was a spiral returning to the same point at a slightly different elevation. She stored this impression alongside all the other things she had stored over the years, the practical wisdom and the grief and the knowledge of what her children were actually like beneath what they appeared to be, and went back to managing the household. The household required managing. José Arcadio and Rebeca moved into their own house, a smaller house, some distance from the Buendía compound, which suited their temperament. They were not people who needed the presence of others to feel complete, and their marriage had the quality of two self-sufficient people, who had chosen each other with the calm certainty of people who have learned that choice is not the same as compromise. Amaranta remained. She lived in the Buendía house with Ursula and the grandchildren, who were beginning to appear, Aureliano's sons, the various offspring of the expanding family, children of the next generation, who were starting to learn the specific rhythms of Macondo and the specific texture of life in the house that Ursula had built. She wrapped her hand in black cloth. Nobody quite knew when this started. It became simply a feature of Amaranta. The black cloth wrapped around her right hand, neither explained nor removed, present in every photograph that would have been taken of her if photographs had existed, visible in every gathering and every meal, and every ordinary moment of a life that was, in its dailiness, entirely normal and, in its interiority, entirely consumed by the specific fire of a feeling she could neither express nor extinguish. Ursula noticed. She always noticed everything. She had been noticing things in this house for decades and had learned to distinguish between the things that required intervention and the things that required only witnessing. Amaranta's black cloth required witnessing. Intervention would have been useless, and Ursula had long since learned not to expend effort on useless interventions. The war showed the first signs of ending, or rather, the first signs appeared of the specific exhaustion that precedes the end of a war that has been going on long enough that everyone has forgotten what they were fighting for and is continuing primarily because stopping requires a negotiation that nobody has the energy to conduct. Colonel Aureliano Buendía was somewhere in this process, conducting battles, losing some, winning others, surviving the assassination attempts and the ambushes with the specific quality of a man who has become, through repetition, very good at not dying. Macondo waited. It had gotten very good at waiting. Chapter Transition. You have reached the end of Chapter 8 of 100 Years of Solitude, by Gabriel García Márquez. In Chapter 9, the war approaches its end. Colonel Aureliano Buendía signs a peace treaty, an act that will define his reputation for the rest of his life, and not in the way he hoped. The family continues to expand and complicate, and Ursula's sense of a repeating pattern becomes impossible to ignore when the next generation begins to display, in their own ways, the same qualities that have defined every Buendía before them. Chapter 9 is available next week. Subscribe to Around the World Lit Audio so you never miss a chapter. A new chapter arrives every week.